Yo, Lucendulas, this is Ketsu, and this is Can I Beat Rimworld for the first time. I had another fire in the hydroponics section and finally figured out the problem. The walls were too far apart to support a roof at the center. Made me feel proper stupid, that one. Once that mystery was solved, we recruited more help. First was Zippy, then Lorenzo, and shortly after, Zippy's father, Webb. What a funny coinkidinky. Nothing bad ever happens with family dynamics in Rimworld. Animal starvation continued to be a thing. Randy also blessed us with sandstone, right as we were running out of chunks, which is a rare act of mercy. Then he balanced it with a blight later, which did nothing, because animals had already eaten everything. Gold was still elusive, so I tried to trade for it. After several attempts, all I managed to acquire was a pocket chains, and a deep sense of disappointment. For my next trick, a mining expedition, I planned carefully. I prepared thoroughly. I wasted a tremendous amount of time, until I found out from the internet that there are no mineral veins in campsites. At this point, I felt exactly like Zippy and Tatsy, confused, angry, and accomplishing nothing. Next, I tried to form a trade caravan, but the idiots refused to leave the map for some reason. They just wandered around like toddlers in a parking lot. Cancelled that and tried again, this time for a quest that promised just enough gold for me to care. That caravan also struggled to achieve liftoff. At this point, I was about as angry as the crew. Turns out one of them was having an asthma attack. Reading it finally convinced everyone that we were in fact allowed to walk forward. Can you guess what happened next? Max raided. Every time it's something. I briefly considered recalling the caravan, but the toasters began their assault before I was done yelling at my screen. This time, I had 3 EMP launchers, and I freaking used them. The fight felt way closer than it probably was, but it was still a complete mess. My crew traded some limbs for that victory, and the bionic replacements were waiting on that gold. And speaking of gold, eventually we did find a vein. Naturally, everything had to go horribly wrong first, but when it showed up, we celebrated like cavemen discovering fire. The quest itself went fine, though our bunkers got hurt pretty nicely. Builds character. We got our gold and some random stuff. Also, none of the enemies survived, just clearing that up. On the way back, some folks and some foxes were effing around in the jurisdiction of finding out. What I mean is the caravan got ambushed twice. Nothing catastrophic, but the first ambush gave us more potential recruits. And the rabid dog cats made an even bigger mess out of Myro. Those little foxes. Since my back door gets invaded every time I send a caravan away, I've decided to simply stop accepting quests. Problem solved. A cute young couple joined us, and instead of immediately eating them, I decided to keep them. As if starving animals weren't already a recurring theme. Next up, Soma's bionic arm installation. By the power of surgical inspiration, Agent stepped up to the operating table and failed impressively. He turned Soma's arm into a you-scratching post and fed him the replacement arm. I don't know, it vanished. Honorable mention to Prisoner Ape, who barely survived a heart infection out of pure stubbornness. The next day, Randy roleplayed as Nestle and dumped his industrial waste wherever he felt like. After that, a Buffalo calf regretted every decision that led it into the traps. In the prison octagon, now officially named the Proctagon, Rebe went berserk and attacked the heart infection survivor. She walked away missing 2 toes. Ape closed the deal with a clean Tyson maneuver. That felt like closure. I didn't ask questions. The defoliator ship got swept as usual. At this point, Randy isn't even attacking us. He's just assigning yard work. Later, I caught Agent cheering up Soma, which was the bare minimum after turning his arm into a salad. Following that, Darkling and Zippy got turned into pincushions by a pikeman I somehow failed to notice among the wreckage. I'm sure we'll all laugh at this mistake later. Haha. Then a bear attacked our stallion. We rushed in to help, but the stallion died of bloodlust later anyway, because nobody cared enough to follow up. Goodbye, Megachat 2. Believe it or not, I won't miss you. After that, we installed some patches on the crew. Lama and Soma, arms hot fixed. Rusty, hard replaced to address a fatal bug. Sin, graphics upgrade, now supports higher resolutions. Ape, new peg leg DLC, courtesy of Agent's ongoing redemption arc. Before Feces hit the AC, Bjarno wanted to fire her best insults at Darkling, but he couldn't give less of a profanity and just went to sleep instead. Confused, Bjarno focused his efforts elsewhere. Webb was also too busy to pay attention. With no audience and no damage dealt, the Panther Bandit disengaged. For Randy's next trick, he sent the Lego raid to close out the year. Ape, who we had literally just released, narrowly avoided getting swept up in the incoming tsunami of bad news. She even put in a good word for us on her way out. Only then did I realize, oh right, they were her people. Every time there is a raid, my deep drills get punished. I don't know who they offended, but the universe hasn't forgiven them. The largest raid in our short but aggressively traumatic history crash landed directly into our traps. On the list of silly little accidents, I forgot to close a door in the gauntlet, which basically let the enemies bypass the reception desk. Huh? Oh boy! Luckily, the attackers were operating at Cha-Cha pings after a headshot levels of intelligence. Tatsi slammed the door shut before it got out of hand, while Carlos and Myro held off the flanking fartknockers. Moments later, enemy morale collapsed under the weight of a freshly curated corpse pile. Now please, escort the survivors politely off my property. Out of the 79 raiders, 65 checked in permanently at Corpse Lake. We had to expand the resort to accommodate the new guests. 3 booked the presidential suites, 1 emotionally unavailable and 2 waiting for an interview. Year 5509 began with Rebe going berserk again. Technically it was psychite withdrawal, but after the 3rd episode, it just felt like her hobby. Darklin tried to help the door outlast her episode. I monitored the situation closely. Of course, Agent tried to pitch in. Then he tried to help again by almost shooting Rebe when it was time for the administered beating. We only managed to patch 1 hole before Lando went berserk too. Alcohol withdrawal. Or maybe the tap water is haunted, assuming we even have tap water. Soon after, some traders rolled up with something I've never seen before, an Architect arm. Naturally, I gave it to Soma. Nepotism. After that, we slapped in more upgrades. Carlos, bionic eye. Web, new spine. Zilla, new leg. Zippy, renamed to Gilo. Welcome back, legend. With that, all limbs were replaced that could be replaced or mattered. A few moments later, Davy face planted out of the sky in a drop pod. We rescued him instead of capturing him, because he was mid-tier at best. Naturally, he immediately joined us. The universe is still mocking me for letting that combat demigod escape earlier. Yeah, I'm not letting that one go. Then, a manhunter pack of 56 Kugas entered the chat. They flooded my trap maze like a retrograde diarrhea with heat. A psychic suit arrived just in time to keep the colony from collectively rage quitting. I learned 2 things. 1, having my melee fighters block the league was stupid. They ate a buffet of friendly fire. And 2, Kugas have an affinity for toes. Following that, Ergo quit being a captive. We had to beat Rebe again, and Rusty and Tatsi became lovers. Oh yeah, I bought huskies for funsies. Nigo and Silla had a social fight, and round 2 in the octagon. Meanwhile, Leonie started an affair with Myro, and they became lovers. I did not know Rimworld allowed speedrunning adultery. Since Rebe was basically a combo meal of mental illnesses, we let her go. Helping her in our rehab clinic even gave us a relations bonus. Lando, inspired by Rebe's legacy, went berserk again. I got distracted by the food rotting in my storage after mangling some settings earlier, and came back to Lando attacking one of our huskies. I authorized lethal pause, but luckily she survived. Against my better judgment, I let her join early, mid-treatment. Mistake. She had another mental breakdown and killed Dragonborn. I nearly banished her on the spot, but she's too useful to throw away. She can work off the murder, naturally. She collapsed catatonic in prison right after. Good for her, she needed the nap. Meanwhile, Leonie on his pilgrimage to romance the entire colony became lovers with Llama. Randy woke up swinging. 8 colonists got malaria. Exciting start for summer. After a few days, the malaria speed bump was over, and a cougar attacked Zilla. I overconfidently thought she could handle it, but my heart sank when she started taking damage, and my brain replayed a past tragedy in microseconds. Thankfully she lived. Losing my best crafter would have had me practicing backflips on the balcony. The next day, negative Nancy 5000 passed ahead. We countered it with a party. After that emotional power wash, we turned the mausoleum into a barn to store all the hay. And just when things finally felt calm, August 6th, Agent's family decided to visit, and judging by the numbers, his extended family came along too. One of our dogs sprinted out to greet them, and immediately turned himself into a cautionary tale. This time, the melee squad stayed back. I didn't want them absorbing that friendly fire like a dartboard at a bachelor party. As expected, the enemy long-range brain thrust clogged the pipe again, so I had to do my usual dance. Poke them, yell at them, reposition, basically the social equivalent of unclogging a toilet. Eventually I found an angle where they were forced to push in, and the first group folded almost instantly, like cheap lawn chairs. The second group followed shortly after, clearly having seen enough of today's performance. We stripped some armor off the floor garbage before they clocked out, and we walked away with 2 potential recruits. Business is booming. After the battle, everyone recruited regressed into hungry toddlers. Blake showed up just to slow me down. And we had another quality round in the Proctagon. Between the 9th and 10th of August, Randy dropped a cosmic weed whacker on us. The Centiblasters were so durable, it turned the fight into 40 hours of on and off long distance disappointment. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Lando hid in her room, as if that was ever optional. Later, we found an unfinished sculpture by Misku, a small, somber discovery. Snowy eventually joined the colony, and the radioactive paperweight finally exploded. We didn't get much of a breather.
Oh no, we get raided now, is that it?
There weren't many, but they brought weapons that reopened the PTSD archive. The fight plan to let them open a choke point to us lasted until Chemfuel got involved. Adapted plan. Use melee to tie down as many happiness-deleting objects as possible. Carlos and Tatsi chose to take the fight in the stupid part of the room. Shockingly, the Chemfuel exploded, and both idiots collapsed like discounted mannequins. Dragging their smoldering corpses out of the aisle of fire was a chore. Shout out to Marine Armor for preventing the grilling. Other than the self-inflicted stupidity, the fight went fine, and the warehouse survived. Mostly. Zilla lost a spine, Biano lost his mind, and it's been a while since Octagon got so absolutely stuffed. Good news, everyone! Walling in the deep drill worked. Mechs can't punch what they can't see. After a couple of days of bed rest, Zilla got her brand spanking spine installed. She's walking better than she ever did with the factory model. I paused the front door reimagining to patch mech-shaped scars, and double wall the Chemfuel storage. I didn't reinstall the generators. If all goes well, we won't be here long enough to need them. August 15th, Randy sent a 128 strong Lego raid. No rest for the crew, just bricks flying everywhere.
Ay ay ay.
I watched my other deep drill get spiritually targeted by this seasonal human tsunami. Foresight 2020. Nice to see this side of the spectrum for once. The good news? They were all melee tribals, which made the fight feel like a zombie tower defense. The bad news? I built a barrier on the right side of the kill box, instead of a wall. That made the enemy pathing just inconvenient enough to annoy me the entire battle. After the dust settled, we collected 5 prisoners, 1 potential recruit, the rest were deemed unwavering and rerouted to the organ donation program. 4 colonists who keep misplacing their kidneys in combat. For our valiant efforts, Randy celebrated us. Thoughtful? Yes, but we'd settle for sleep or stability, either one. Also, Lando finally wrapped up her rehab arc and rejoined society like nothing happened. Love a good redemption story. Moments later, Randy dangled a quest to rescue someone named Iselle. New porn hype, big mistake, she turned out to be jealous. I risked the colony for someone who throws tantrums if other people have nicer bedrooms.
Frick, I didn't want jealous.
Amazing. The raiders rained in after her, scattering across the map like confetti at a clown funeral. Naturally, one landed directly inside the hydroponics. Of course it did. I dispatched 2 bonkers to deal with the agricultural antagonist, before he could uproot all of my emotional support rice. We weren't even done sweeping up the previous batch of idiots, but the battle was going great. Right up until one guy spun towards us with a doomsday launcher. I cleansed my entire lower body, but luckily we deleted him before he could press the big red button.
Look, they found their way to the deep drill. Of course they did. What is that? Yo! What the frick was that?
Turns out, there was a second doomsday launcher. Aside from that brief cardiac episode, no major damage, just another wholesome Rimworld afternoon. I hope this impresses you as much as it impresses me. I've been spiritually ready to leave this planet ever since Carlos and Tatsi got their faces exfoliated in the Chemfuel storage, but Randy said no. Apparently, harvesting a few spare parts is enough to send both the prisoners and my colonists into a dancing spectrum of mental collapse. Biano decided to pitch in by encouraging prisoners to escape, which triggered Nat to perform a one-woman jailbreak speedrun. Astor swooped in to arrest Biano, promptly dropped his minigun, and Nat picked it up like it was loot from a tutorial chest and immediately opened fire. So I made Astor tank it with his shield belt as punishment. Then Lando arrived to resolve the situation. At this point I was so emotionally checked out, I stopped caring if people use weapons on prisoners, just end the noise. From there, everyone kept trying to snort the entire pharmacy inventory, and Astor kept handing out brain resets, which caused a feedback loop where they threw more tantrums for being imprisoned. A beautiful self-sustaining ecosystem of stupid. I stripped Iselle the Jealous, threw her in prison, and left the door open on purpose, hoping that letting her walk out wouldn't give us a mood debuff. It did, of course it did. September 4th, we finally became allies with Abracadabra after years of trading, a lighthouse in the Sea of Tears. Ergo got a shiny new bionic tummy the next day. Then, an amped up male psychic downer swooped in and punched everyone's emotions in the throat. Agent decided to cope by beating prisoners. First Lorenzo, then Nico, then presumably the concept of peace itself. Darkling reached that impressionable age, took it too far, and tried to do a murder on Nat. Because my people struggle with doors, like the aliens in Science, but in reverse, Nat earned herself some unearned parole. At this point, I stopped trying to rehabilitate anyone, and just left the worst offenders in jail, until the "someone's ear can harvested" mood debuff finally expired.
She's actually... Okay, there we go. She's attacking Darkling. Darkling is like, I want 5 more minutes.
Meanwhile, Lianu started an insult spree on CJ, because he was greedy about his bedroom, which had changed because of his affairs. Can they stop hitting themselves in the head for 5 minutes? During all this pandemonium, Nat joined. Terrible timing, but welcome aboard. Then I had my own personal tantrum when I realized that instead of reimagining the entire front door, I could have just put a sandbag in the corner to stop enemies from using it as cover. At least that's how I think it would work. We're back to hindsight, baby! The downward spiral started on the 1st of September, and on the 8th, the emotional teeter-totter finally calmed down. Longest week ever. Once people stopped shrieking at the walls, I finally noticed we didn't walk away scot-free from the earlier Doomsday blast. Zilla had severe brain damage this whole time. No wonder she was walking like Windows Vista. My V. Next up, installing our ethically sourced spare parts. Kidney for Carlos, a lung for Chilo. I had to ban Darkling, Agent and Astur from doctoring, because they all really wanted to do the surgeries, and I really wanted my colonists to remain alive. While I was fighting the UI to make Honkaton do the operation, this happened.
There is a kidney right there. Oh, okay, Dark took it. Never mind.
After retrieving the stolen kidney from the world's happiest criminal, we successfully installed it into G-Box. Unfortunately, we couldn't fix everyone, because we had a kidney where we needed a lung, and our donors were long gone. On a side note, storing the organs in the fridge next to the meat was practically begging for an incident report titled, "Why does this steak have a barcode?" The next plan, simplicity itself. Wait for the anesthesia to wear off, then leave immediately. But did we get to do that?
Infestation?
Of course. Just as we were psyching ourselves up to clean out the bug prison, the flu showed up like an extra with bad timing. Even double granite walls couldn't handle the heat of the extermination. At least the discount facehuggers had the decency to stay inside this time. The aftermath made me think of some tasteless retro neon splatter pants from a cursed timeline. I say that to pretend I know anything about fashion. I don't. Next, Darkling decided the healthiest response to stress was digging up my long dead brother. Not cool, man. Meanwhile, half the colony was bedridden with the flu, which meant we were still not leaving. The ship remained a myth, a bedtime story. 2 days later, things looked technically survivable.
What do you say, guys? Should we leave? I think it's about time we leave.
And that's it for this time, folks. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Take care now. Bye bye then. Have a wonderful day.